Good morning. This is really amazing. I'm kind of like stuck in shock right now. We've got over 256 people in here. Yeah. 10 years ago when we started this program, we had the program in the Gene Harris room at Alive Hospice. There were 38 people there. And the only reason we had 38 people there is because my supervisor's dad sent 17 people from his office. And I was the caterer that year, actually. I catered it through Publix and went to Publix and begged for 2-for-1 bagels. And now to be at this wonderful facility with so many of you, give yourselves a hand clap, because this would be great if this was a symposium on vacation rentals or massage therapy or how to buy your next dream home, but we're talking about the end of life. And to have our community here together, representing people from Tennessee to Oregon, is really a beautiful thing. And so I want to go ahead and bring up our panel here. This is one of the best parts of the program. I think everything in the program is great, but just the fact that no matter how you practice, what you practice or don't practice, we all come together at the end of life. As human beings, we all share the simple fact that we're all mortal, and that in life there's a 100% mortality rate. And over the last 10 years of Alive, I've had the pleasure of speaking in synagogues and mosques, churches. One year I did a pagan solstice celebration in the woods, and the questions were the same. People want to know, what will the end of my life look like? Who's going to be around me? What's going to be there? What kind of team does the hospice have? What questions should I ask a funeral home? What questions should we ask the doctor? And no matter what the faith tradition is, the basic questions are the same. And then I realized too, as care providers, we have to make sure that we are caring for patients to the best of our abilities to make sure that their needs and expectations are met, that their ethics and their values are also met, and that we are doing the best job to take care of them as a whole, not just a disease or a person, but as a whole being. And so I'd like to bring up Rabbi Joshua Kullock, Kris Robinson, and Bishop Robert Johnson, and Blake Farmer for our panel. And you guys are going to be in for a great treat. And if Reverend Jennifer Jarvis is here, raise your hand. All right, thank you.
Good morning. I got to get Keith on the radio because, or give him my job, I guess. Because my name's Blake Farmer, and I'm a reporter here in town. I cover healthcare at Nashville Public Radio, and I see a Nashville Public Radio bottle here, so I just bless you. It means she's giving monthly to Nashville Public Radio. Yeah, give her a hand, fine. Anyway, I don't even know what's going on today. I'm either the best person to be up here or the worst, because my mother died Sunday, and I didn't mean for a big all, but it's quite a week, and she's been with Alive for 13 months. So they love their nurse Penny. I don't think that she's here. Maybe she is, but she is here. She's probably working too hard. She's not. No, they adore her, and anyway, that's where I am today. We had the funeral yesterday, and it was a beautiful thing, and it was in her church that she went to for so long, Woodmont Hills, and yet, because of her illness, she had ALS, and it really distanced her from her congregation over those years. And over that time, they changed ministers, and the people she knew and loved kind of dispersed. And so, in the end, there wasn't as much connection as she would have liked. In fact, the man who's the music minister there now, music was her thing. And so, she had sent him an email when he was hired earlier this year and said, I will likely never meet you. But trust me, I'm so proud that you're our new music minister, and I promise you I will be watching the services online and participating. So Anyway, so I'm going to probably ask something about that kind of thing too as we get going, but so I don't step in it, I'm going to have everyone just introduce themselves. Would that be okay?
Sure.
I think you got your solo mic here. I think they're on.
Okay. Oh, no.
There you go.
I'm Kris. Is that
Yep.
on? I'm Kristy Robinson. I am a ordained Buddhist chaplain, and I am a member of the One River Wisdom School here in Nashville.
Morning. My name is Joshua Kullock. I am the rabbi at the Western Synagogue. As you may hear, I am not from Nashville. I grew up in the real South in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Happy to be here with you all.
Good morning. I'm Bishop Robert Johnson. I'm a bishop in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm actually on my second tour of duty, so to speak, as bishop in our church, and so grateful to be here.
Bishop Johnson, let's start with you. I kind of thought, as we just sort of launch into things, if you wouldn't mind, for the audience here, telling us, kind of some of the top three, if you would call them traditions, sort of end-of-life traditions in your faith community.
I hadn't thought of it as the top three. It's an interesting thing. Death and dying is something that we all experience in our lives. I was 26 years old when my own father passed away, and have missed him all these many years. And so it's an interesting thing. He died of an aortic aneurysm, so it went very quickly. Then 20 years ago, my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer. And to see that and to just share my experience, I was in a hotel in Phoenix, Arizona on business. Got a phone call that my mother's cancer had returned, and I was devastated, and I just wept. Called my wife, and I couldn't even talk to her because of, just my feelings about that. But things about that I have learned in life, and the one thing that we all need is that we need to have hope. No matter what we do, we need to hold on to hope and go forward with that. And so traditions, the key on it, I think, and thinking about my own mother when she passed away, our family was heavily involved. I was living in Southern California. They were living in Utah, so I couldn't be there as much as my siblings. I did fly up and spend some time with my mom before she passed. But friends, that's really the key, is that her friends never forsook her. They continued to look after her, continued watching over her, and being able to just be there, and she knew that she was loved. I think that's a key with that. It's hard for us to go into a home when we know that loved one is not going to be here for long. But yet just going in and saying, I love you. That's really what they need to know. But again, that one thing that we hold on to is hope. Let me just share with you just the verses from the Book of Mormon that I just want to just share. It says, and again, my beloved brethren, I would speak unto you concerning hope. How is it that you can attain unto faith, save you shall have hope? And what is it that ye shall hope for? Behold, I say to you that ye shall have hope through the atonement of Christ and the power of his resurrection to be raised unto life eternal, and this because of your faith in him, according to the promise. Wherefore, if a man have faith, he must needs have hope. Without faith, there cannot be any hope. And so that's the key. And so we do know, and part of our end-of-life beliefs is that this isn't the end. We do know that we will see them again. I look forward to that reunion where I'll see my parents, my friends, those that have passed on before me, and I'll be able to greet them, love them, embrace them, and just weep with them again.
But can you talk about some of the, I think of some folks, there'd be last rites, right, with maybe a Catholic.
Sure.
Is there
Sure.
anything that someone want to, I know in my tradition, someone might want to have communion one last time, that sort of thing. But anything like that?
You know what, we don't.
Yeah.
In general, we don't, but we still visit. Yeah, we will take in the sacrament into that individual that may be in a hospice unit that continues to go on that part. As they near the end of their life, we also will release them, so to speak, from this life. We will use a laying on of hands, and we did this with my mother, but a laying on of hands where we release them and allow them to pass. I think there's an apprehension on their part that they don't want to die either because of that unknown of what they're going through, but yet we will do that, and that's why I say a laying on of hands where we release them from this life We did that with my mother. I've done that with other individuals. Young man that was, not far from here as he was passing away from cancer. Yeah, we do that.
Couldn't win. I mean, that seems.
That's a great question. It could be days, could be weeks, or could be minutes before they pass away. So it does take place, but there's no given time frame for that. There's nothing that says when you should do that. It just depends on what the family's needs are and what their concerns are. We hold on to life. Everyone holds on to life as long as they can. We don't want that loved one to go because of our love for them, but yet we do reach out and we will release them from this life as necessary.
Rabbi Kullock, let's just go down the road here. Fill us in. Help us maybe understand some of the Jewish tradition.
So within the Jewish tradition, when someone is approaching the last moments of his or her time here on earth, the idea is to create a moment in which, if they are still conscious, they will be able to go through what we call vidui, which is a last confession, kind of trying to make peace with themselves in where they are. It's the time to ask for forgiveness if there is a need to ask for forgiveness, or it is a time to hear that they are forgiven and that we are asking forgiveness as well. And in that regard, the idea is to create a moment in which we can help that person to transitioning into the next stage of their journeys. One of the most beautiful metaphors that I heard a few years ago, and I work with families when we are gathering around someone in their last moments, is that part of our challenge is to become the midwives of the soul into the next stage, which, as much as we need to hope for a complete healing, we also need to work with ourselves in understanding that sometimes we need to release. And many times we are afraid of that, we don't want to do it, it's a painful experience. Who wants to release someone that you love so much, knowing that you won't see that person again? And yet, sometimes the act of mercy is not in hoping for that person to recover, it's for understanding that it's time to go and to move into the next stage. So when we come together, the idea of us becoming the midwives of the soul into the next stage is a powerful image that works for me, and that it has also worked for the families when the time comes.
And aside from that kind of last moment forgiveness piece, is there any sort of, do congregations come around, or there's special, it may just depend on the congregation, but people come in, do they flood the place with food, or do they,
most of the time this happens within the context of the family. It's an intimate moment. It's not for, and I wouldn't advise for everyone to show up to those moments, because there is certain sensibility and vulnerability that should remain within the family and maybe close friends. Every person is a universe, but this is not a communal thing that we do. This is usually at the hospital or at Alive or at their homes. It depends. Sometimes the person is conscious. Most of the times the person is not, and yet we are there hoping that the person is feeling what's going on and is getting ready for the next stage. And it's a powerful moment.
It is. Ms. Robinson, will you kind of explain a little bit? I am most interested in what you have to say.
Well, the end of life is very important for Buddhists. We see the end of life as a great teacher, and meditation and mindfulness of dying are very important at that time. And so we enter into that kind of phase of our lives, hoping that some of the habits and disciplines that we have used in our meditation practice will serve us as we are dying. And so the most important thing really is that we like a peaceful, kind of calm atmosphere, like the vibe at Alive Hospice, the residence unit. You know, there's a certain reverence for life there, and you feel a sacredness there. And so that's the atmosphere that most of us would like to have as we're passing. If it's in a hospital room, that's a little harder. At home, you know, just make sure that there's not a lot of people coming in. You know, there might be some communal involvement from our Sangha, but it depends on the person. So if they want to have more of a silent, kind of solitary death, we will honor that, and, you know, we'll come in and sit silently with them. But hopefully they will have made their wishes known before.
And what are the sort of the words of comfort? Because frankly, I'm not sure I fully know the sort of belief in the afterlife, which you realize when you're in that moment, there's not a whole lot left to say.
Right, true. Yeah.
To give any hope.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are the things that can be comforting in those times?
Yeah, I mean, Buddhism is a non-theistic religion or practice. We think of it as more of a practice than a religion. But there are things that we say. There's a Heart Sutra that is old, probably about 3,000 years old in the Pali Canon, that most Buddhists, it's kind of like the Lord's Prayer. So that is chanted. It's a beautiful piece about life and death. You know, and often we'll just sit silently with the person and, you know,
If it
maybe
comes
touch
to you,
them.
Can you give us a few lines of that? I'm just so unfamiliar.
Yeah. Let's see. Life and death are of extreme importance. Life passes quickly. Wake up. Do not squander your life. That's one stanza. So, you know, it's deep.
Yeah.
But
Well, let's since we've already gone deep, then, talk to me about the afterlife, and you're sort of already getting there. But how do you approach? I mean, I imagine there's probably, my understanding is in the Buddhist practice, that there is a wide variety of views.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that? You know, when there's not sort of at least a guideline for here's what we believe.
Right. I think the majority of Buddhists are agnostic about the afterlife. It's, you know, we feel that is there, but we don't really talk about it that much. Tibetan Buddhists have a whole practice built on the afterlife. It's very complicated, and that's kind of the hub of a lot of their belief systems. But my practice is Zen Buddhism, and then I also have a practice in insight meditation. So that's a Western version, kind of jiving with the Japanese version. And so, you know, we do feel like the essence or the true self moves on after death, and we're curious about it, but you know, and fearful and have anxiety and all the other messy stuff that comes with death. But there is a certainty of continuing on, but it's not necessarily like a heaven. It's more of a, you know, an energy or an essence that goes on.
Yeah. That's great. Welcome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, whatever traffic or rain or whatever's going on, and I love that you're here. Do you want to take a minute, or can you introduce yourself?
I can introduce
Great,
myself.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Jarvis. I left my house over an hour ago, for the
God
record,
bless you.
and I live 30 minutes away. Just for the record, I am a PCUSA minister. I was brought up kind of ecumenically. I was actually born in Minnesota and started out Catholic, then Lutheran. Then we moved to Tennessee, and there are not as many Lutherans in Tennessee as there are in Minnesota, in case you were wondering. So I ended up growing up in the PCUSA church, and I have actually spent my entire career as a hospital chaplain and a hospice chaplain. I've done both. And primarily right now, my work is perinatal, so working with moms and families. And unfortunately, I don't always get called for the good stuff, but I do always get called for the bad stuff. So a lot of what I do is grief and bereavement work with families who are going through loss at the beginning of life. And I have done a lot of work with children in particular, because a lot of these kiddos have siblings who are sad too.
So, we just went into the deep end here
Sure.
to get going, but can you talk a little bit about, as a chaplain, I assume you bring your faith to that. You're a Christian chaplain.
I am a Christian chaplain, yes.
So what does that look like when you're working with families, of your faith and maybe of other faith, of how you kind of give them hope or encouragement?
Sure. Well, don't tell anyone I said this, but Presbyterians are pretty generic Christians. The standard overarching things, baptism, communion, and things like that. Nothing overly exciting going on there. But there is an actually huge benefit to that. And part of that is how I grew up, which is that more ecumenical background. That's hugely beneficial for being a chaplain. What my faith tells me is that what your faith is the most important thing when you are grieving. When I'm grieving, my faith gets to be the most important thing. But as a person of faith who is motivated by love, my goal is to help support you in what you need in that moment. So working with people of other faith traditions, it's about making sure that they can have the rituals and rites, or in the hospital, sometimes we have to do a facsimile of that. We run oxygen through the walls, so we don't light candles. Mm-hmm. But there are flameless candles. But you can still bring in a regular candle and go through the motions of lighting it. So things that feel like there wouldn't be a way to do. Part of being a chaplain is thinking creatively with the family, hearing what the ritual is, and then trying to see if that's something we can do in the hospital. And over the years, I have come up with a lot of different things. We had to get a stock pot from the kitchen one day because we had a pagan who needed a cauldron. And the stock pot worked. So it's more about being motivated to care for those people and honor their traditions. And what I found is that a lot of people, it's not necessarily their faith tradition, but almost where they come from. Midwesterners have some different traditions than Southerners do, and same from coast to coast. So you can't assume that you know what someone's going to want at end of life just because they look a certain way or espouse a certain faith tradition. And so it's really healing to ask, what is it that you need? And to help kind of brainstorm with them, because they're having a hard time thinking about that too.
And so within the Christian faith, can you talk a little bit about maybe the spectrum in the belief of the afterlife? Because it does seem like a spectrum. Like some people seem to have a very
10 years
specific
to
vision.
convert for this conversation.
Okay,
The spectrum is huge. And it's my experience that almost every single person's is just a little bit different. So the most generic basic is there is a heaven, that is where you go to be with God. There is a hell, hell is apart from God. As we continue to move through life, I have noticed that people's visions of what this dichotomy looks like is different. For some people, there's the concept that what we are now is a form of hell, because we are not with God in body. Others, hell is definitely a place that you go to. And that is the very worst thing because it is eternal. Heaven is great, in case you did not get that memo in this culture, because that's where you go to get to be with God and to hold that holiness for all of eternity.
And how do you navigate that without I mean, it seems like it'd be a difficult time to ask them, well, now, what do you believe specifically is going to happen? It's like, well, I thought you were here for that.
Right. No, and sometimes I do I thought you were here to tell me, and I say, no, that's way above my pay grade.
That's good.
That decision is made on another level. I think most people, it's the fear of the unknown. The fear of, but what next? Whatever it is, it doesn't even matter. Some people do find a lot of comfort in the thought of heaven and being in God's presence. Other people, even that is scary because they don't know what it's going to look like. And they're just not 100% sure that that's what's happening. So it's assuring them that none of us can know for sure what's going to happen. But we do the best with what we have. And we try and come to peace with the fact that the hardest thing is saying goodbye to this life. And that's true with families too. Because in the hospital, it's not always, you don't always know that you're coming to say goodbye. So we focus on what they do believe. And a lot of people actually do know what they believe. And they say that and you say, okay, great.
Wow. Well, Rabbi Kullock, I'm sure that there's a spectrum in Judaism as well. So can you kind of give us the pointers?
So yes, there is a spectrum going all the way from people who will come and say, no, Jews do not believe in heaven and hell, which is not true in terms of what the sources are teaching us, to all sorts of variations of what we just heard with a Jewish flavor.
I mean, we stole it from you.
So yeah. It's good that you acknowledge that. God bless. So, instead of going through all the nuances, the truth is, and this is what when people come and ask me, particularly, I prefer to say something along the lines of, in Judaism, we believe that there is a continuation, but the most sincere, honest, and good answer that I can give is, we don't know what is going to be. Instead of trying to create all sorts of theories about what may happen, which we don't know, I usually tell that no one who went came back to tell us. So all the different takes are projections that we try to put together. And so I prefer to spend less time in building on any of those theories and to share the belief that this is not the end of the road. It could be the end of a stage, but the journey continues somehow. How we don't know. And the truth is, I prefer to move away from that because we won't get to know until we get there. And so I think that the comforting piece is the belief in that there is something that continues. The details are beyond, as was just said, to me are less important. And again, I try to be as honest as I can with the congregants or members of my faith who would come and ask me. And I prefer not to sell them on something that I don't have a clue. To tell them that yes, I believe that there is a next stage, even if I can't describe it with all the bells and whistles of what we are going to get. I don't know.
But I'm thinking of situations where people would maybe even be very specific and say, will I get to see my mother? You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
what do you say to that?
And to that I say I don't have a clue. It's like the part of what we religious leaders need to understand is that saying I don't know is a fair and truth, and it's the best possible answer. So I'm gonna see my mom. I don't know. It's like, if you want to, I hope you will get to. But that's the best I can tell you in all honesty, without feeling that I'm giving you, the answer that I think that you want to listen or to hear, because then I'm not truthful to my rabbinic call. So it's like, I prefer to be with you in the uncertainty, and part of what means to be humans is to learn to cope with uncertainties. I know that faith have based much of what they do in trying to actually shovel a fake sense of certainty.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's the right way to go. And I prefer that we all learn to cope with the uncertainty, and we understand as a humbling experience that we're entitled to say, I don't know. And I hope as much as you do.
Did you want to add something, Reverend Jarvis? You were reaching for the mic.
Oh, no, yes, 100%.
Okay.
That's totally.
Bishop Johnson, fill us in.
So one thought in our belief system is that when we die, we do believe that we are taken to the God that created us and gave us life. And so we do hold on to that, and as I said about that with hope. I brought a story with me, and it's a story that's made an impact on me in my life, and just reflecting upon what happens when we leave. And this was a story that was told by David O. McKay, who served in the leadership of our church. And it's about a dream that he had now almost 100 years ago. And it says, I fell asleep and beheld in vision something infinitely sublime. In the distance, I beheld a beautiful white city. Though far away, yet I seemed to realize that trees with luscious fruit, shrubbery with gorgeously tinted leaves, and flowers in perfect bloom abounded everywhere. The clear sky above seemed to reflect these beautiful shades of color. I then saw a great concourse of people approaching the city. Each one wore a white flowing robe and a white headdress. Instantly, my attention seemed centered upon their leader, and though I could see only the profile of his features and his body, I recognized him at once as my Savior. The tender radiance of his countenance was glorious to behold. There was a peace about him which seemed sublime, it was divine. The city, I understood, was his. It was the city eternal, and the people following him were to abide there in peace and eternal happiness. But who were they? As if the Savior read my thoughts, he answered by pointing to a semicircle that then appeared above them, and on which were written in gold the words, These are they who have overcome the world, who have truly been born again. When I awoke, it was breaking day. And so that thought, just thinking about life after death, there is a greater existence. There is hope. And I do have a firm belief and testimony that, yes, I will see my parents again. I will see my mother again. And I am grateful for that.
Well, now that sounds very specific. I mean, is that sort of now the belief that Mormons say, this is the vision, this is where you're headed?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. There's a lot more. I mean, a lot of it depends on how we conduct our life. We do believe that there is a separation between the righteous and the wicked. And so, I'm not going to be the one that judges that. I'm grateful for that because I don't have the knowledge and ability to do that. And I'm not going to say that, oh, you're wicked, you're going to go here. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, I bet there aren't many deathbeds where that's, I'm not sure that you actually made the cut. But how do you handle that truly? Because I would imagine this sort of forgiveness aspect, even if it's just a doubt in your mind, is runs through many religious faiths, whether I've been good enough or something.
Well, and you know what, we believe that the Savior is going to give us everything that he can possibly give us when we leave. Each of us is at a different level, and so we each have different experiences in life, different things that give us opportunities to serve. We think that charity is really what is the best benefit, and that if we're charitable with others, inasmuch as you've done unto one of the least of these, my brethren, you've done unto me. That's how we try to conduct our lives.
Ms. Robinson, can we start with you on the next
Sure,
round?
sure.
I'm just going to hit you with
Okay.
a fastball.
Okay.
I wonder, and I think you're a great person to speak to this, given where we are, kind of in the Bible Belt. But I wonder what kind of guidance you would give to folks on maybe making sure that the death experience doesn't become some sort of opportunity for a last-minute conversion. You know what I mean? I imagine Buddhists who would seem like targets to some folks.
And then conversion, or what
To
exactly?
another faith, to
another- oh.
you know, it seems a little last ditch, but you know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
for
yeah.
so many people,
Right.
it's this
A more
moment.
dichotomous.
Okay. I think people who are kind of consider themselves Western Buddhists do have kind of layers of faith. You know, typically we do come from Christian backgrounds. So my teacher, Gordon Pierman, who does the One River Wisdom School, he's an Episcopal priest and also a meditation teacher. And so I think there's more of an amalgam, you know, in Western Buddhism. Now, you know, with Eastern Buddhists, you know, that's a different story, and I'm not well versed in that. But you know, I think the idea of, you know, a lot of people think of Buddhism when the afterlife as emptiness, and we prefer to use the word boundlessness. And you know, but I think with Buddhist, you know, the Dalai Lama even has said, I saw him speak in Louisville, you don't necessarily need to change your religion of origin to be a Buddhist.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
You're saying that thus there are many flavors and beliefs
Yes,
within
right.
it.
It can be layered upon. I mean, it really is more of a psychology than a religion. You know, like mindfulness has been taken out of Buddhism, especially around death. And I think everybody now knows kind of what mindfulness is, which is, you know, having more awareness in the present moment. And that's really the main teaching of Buddhism, is trying to be as aware as you can in your body right now instead of off in your head, as we think 50,000 thoughts a day. So just trying to clear space out of that and experience really what's going on right now is a big deal for us.
Reverend Jarvis, you didn't sound like you came from an evangelical background, but still, I imagine there are times where someone seems to need something to cling to, and you could offer something. You know, how do you handle that?
So, I mean, the shortest answer is it depends. But for me, in my specific role, I am not just the clergy person there. I am a representative of most faith traditions in the hospital. Not just mine. I am the spiritual witness in this very medical place. And so to tread the very thin, crackled line of, I will wonder with you, but I cannot impose upon you because you are not in a position of strength at that point. You are weak and vulnerable, and for me to impose what I believe on you is abusive. It's unfair because I'm taking advantage of you. So while I can wonder with you and I can answer specific questions, and a lot of them are, I don't know, then that is what I can do. But I cannot tell you what to believe or what to think. And in fact, part of my job is to make sure that other people aren't doing that either.
What does that look like? What do you mean?
Well, we have some wonderful caregivers. It turns out nurses went into nursing because they take care of people. And they have their own faiths and biases as well. And so I have had many conversations over the years with nurses who are terrified that their sweet, wonderful patients are going to hell because they're not Christian. And so to pull them out of that moment and to say, that's not what we can be worried about right now. That's not up to us anyway. What we are here to do is to love this person as they are, where they are. That's what we're here for. That's how we take care of them. And it can be very hard for them because they're so worried about what this person will have happen next. But even if they are Christian and they do espouse that belief, I still cannot guarantee anyone heaven. So to help them kind of take that step back and remind them of that specificity, I think is a way that that I try and help the nursing staff as well.
Well, I'm sure there are people who respond, well, you're wrong. You must not really be a Christian then.
And that is fine.
Yeah.
They are welcome to think that.
Yeah.
I'm not offended by that, because my goal in that moment is to protect the patient and their individuality and to honor the sacredness of who they are. And the idea of trying to change everything they believe at the last minute does not feel like honoring their sacredness.
That's really insightful. Rabbi Kullock, help us out with you, kind of what this, any conversions or...
First, thank you. Thank you. It's like, in so many levels, you know, given the numbers of a city like Nashville, you know, there are 8,000 Jews in Nashville, which means that the hospitals do not have Jewish chaplains on a regular basis. And because of the new regulations, many times we don't even, you know, members of my congregation, I will know, I keep telling them, please let me know if someone is in the hospital, because I'm a rabbi, I'm not a prophet, so if you don't tell me, I don't know.
I got your back on the other side, by the way.
So, and the hospitals cannot let us know that there's a Jewish patient there, so it creates a bit of a challenge in sometimes Jewish patients that are visited by great chaplains, and then.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can work with our chaplains in this wonderful understanding that imposing my faith upon them is not necessarily the best way to honor their human dignity in a very delicate moment at the end of their lives is so important. In the Jewish tradition, we have a theological advantage in the understanding that you don't have to be Jewish to get to heaven. Whatever that heaven is, you don't have to be Jewish to be in heaven. So for us, we don't have the need to rush into making Jews out of people for them to get to heaven, because the fast track to heaven will depend on what did you do in this life. Mm-hmm. If you were a good Christian, good Muslim, good Buddhist, etc., or good atheists even, you can get a place, you can get a continuation. And so even the wicked folks that we were talking about before, according to the Jewish tradition, now no one stays in hell forever. Maybe no one is an overstatement, but most of everyone that is not really wicked gets a time in hell, but then goes to heaven. And the point here then is we don't go looking to Jew race at the end of the life, because we don't see any need on any of that. So, you know, rabbis, Jewish chaplains in bigger cities will go and pretty much attend to the needs of the Jewish patients. But if they need to be next to someone who is not Jewish, the conversation won't ever be, well, get a circumcision and see what. No, it's not gonna happen. So if someone is doing that, that person is not Jewish. Take their Jewish title from them, because that's not how it works.
A deathbed circumcision.
Yeah. Don't try it. No.
All right, Bishop Johnson, save us. But this, you know, also as a somewhat religious minority, at least in your denomination, how do you handle, you know, maybe an evangelical experience, maybe for some of your folks?
That's a great question. So we have individuals that are across the spectrum, so to speak, in regards to their testimonies, their faith, their beliefs. which I think in this room we're all in that same arena. We all have different levels that we're at, and so our belief system, we all have that desire to want to know, and I think when it comes to death and dying, we all want to know. So Rabbi, if I've been circumcised, I'm okay?
Even if you have not, just be good.
Okay, I'm trying.
There you go.
But and that's the same thing as that we talked about, is how do we conduct our life. We are active in the community in regards to our missionary endeavors. We have people that want to know, and we'd love to talk with you and share with you and share our beliefs in Jesus Christ. But it's a personal thing. Yeah. It's really, are you ready, and do you want to know that?
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you may be a bit of a different mind than Reverend Jarvis. So explain to me how you would navigate someone who needed something there at the end. Because I can just see, once you're looking over the edge, it becomes a little more stark, the choices that you have. And some people might not see that as vulnerability, but more openness, a new openness or something. So how do you navigate that without crossing what I can see would be a pretty hard line?
You know what, things that we do talk about, we may talk about, just to share with you some thoughts. Revelations 14:13, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord. I think that's an important thing that people understand, and their belief system, testimonies, knowledge. We also believe that death can be sweet unto an individual on how they've conducted their life as well. And you can say, well, how can it be sweet? We're the ones that grieve. They're the ones that have that uncertainty till they pass through to the other side. But that sweetness comes when they do get to the other side. That's when they experience that love that, we do believe that, we will see the Savior. We will embrace him. We will cry at his feet and bathe his feet with our tears. Those are things that we do know that we will do.
Our time is running short, and so I thought we might just sort of go down the road this way, starting with you, Bishop Johnson. And I wonder if you could sort of hit us with just your top do and your top don't for caregivers, congregations, chaplains, when they're dealing with folks of your particular tribe at the end of life. Does a clear do and don't, things, this is a thing not to say, this is a thing to make sure to say or do?
I think the key on death and dying is that when we have that loved one, friend, relative, whatever it might be, is that we love them. We let them know that we love them. When I was there at my mother's passing, I just, Mom, I love you. And there are moments today, even though I just think, Mom, I love you. I'm grateful for you. Dad, I love you. I'm grateful for you. So we have to tell them, they just need to know that they will be missed and that we care for them. What are the don'ts that we do? Don't judge. Don't judge. I don't have the capacity to judge someone and say, had you done this in your life, you're going to go to heaven, but because you did this, that's not up to me to decide that. That will come at a future date, and I'm not the one that's going to make that decision. I'm just going to try and make them comfortable. I want them to be happy. I want them to know that they will be missed, and I'm going to try and make them comfortable in that regards.
That's good. Kullock?
Following on the same lines, it's a time for asking for forgiveness or for forgiving those who are about to leave this world. It's time to share the love. It is not a time for theological. Sometimes some conversations are in place. Sometimes they are just an avoidance trick that we do not to deal with the pain and the suffering and the loss. So we need to be very mindful of that. A big don't, following on what we were talking before, for those who are caregivers, chaplains in hospitals, at least with Jewish patients. Don't talk about Jesus. He was a nice Jewish boy, don't get me wrong. But I think that, at least speaking on behalf of the Jewish patients, that doesn't make any sense, especially in that type of situation. Even if they, whatever, I would say that that's a big no. As you know, I'm asking for a favor. Then this is a free country. So, but most of all, it's a moment to be with our dear ones, to reflect and to share the love that we have for one another. And when the time comes to learn how to let go, which is a humbling and painful experience, but can be also very healing. And the beginning of healing may be exactly at the moment in which we make peace with reality. So that's it.
Ms. Robinson.
Okay. Yeah, if you're in a space where you're taking care of somebody that has a Buddhist faith at the end of life, again, the main thing is kind of the peaceful atmosphere. Also coming into the room kind of maybe with a more grounded sense of trying to kind of be there in the moment. Probably not a lot of loud talking or talking in the room. Making sure that you make contact with the person, and not only treating death as a medical event, but an emotional and spiritual event as well. And if the person is wanting to use their death as a practice, they may want to hold off on some of the morphine or drugs that would make them feel a little bit woozy. So I think it's a continuous check-in process to kind of see where they are and make sure that all the different pains are being taken care of, but also honoring what they're wanting to use death as, if they're wanting to use it as a teaching tool.
I really had not considered that, and I imagine it wouldn't be alone with Buddhism, that there would be people who say, this feels like abusing drugs or something with morphine at the end. Is that becomes an issue, or people want to be just clear of mind?
I think I think you don't know until you're in that situation.
But how do you know in the moment? It's a crazy situation.
Yeah, I think you don't. So I think that's why, if there's a family member there that's a little bit more intuitive with the person, they could probably direct the staff. But I think the main thing is this idea that there is a reverence for life, and that the Buddhist has been training, for decades for this very event, and so to honor that process.
You're saying that the lifetime of meditation is in a way seen as
practice for death. Yes.
I mean that's news to me, honestly. That's lovely. All right, great. Help us out.
I think the major do is approach with humility. The veil between life and death is thin, and that requires humility. There's sacredness in that moment, and whether it is with your family, whether you are the caregiver, it is about being mindful that that's not a space that is occupied by everyone. And I think if you start with that humility, it will guide you through that process. Again, you don't have all the answers, no one does. So we open ourselves to walk with that person as they transition into whatever or into nothing. Because that transition is happening, so we are just there for that journey. And I think the don't is again, don't assume. And I agree, don't judge, because it's not the time for that. And it's way above all of our pay grades.
What's the assumption? Don't assume what?
Just don't assume. Don't assume Don't assume.
Don't assume they're a Christian, or don't assume that. What do you mean?
Just don't assume. Don't assume you know what they need. Don't assume they know what they need. Be in conversation. Ask questions. Let them ask you questions, because you're both bringing your own specific experiences and expertise to this situation. If you are the caregiver and you have medical knowledge, they need that. But hear what they have to bring as well. And don't assume that just because they look one way, they have a certain set of beliefs, because that might not be true at all. And even if they espouse, hey, I am a Christian, there is a huge range. And so knowing that that when you have the chance to have those conversations, there is nothing more spiritual, more life-giving than reflecting at death.
That's a beautiful place to end, unless you want to pray, and you should do that.
Nope.
It's not the time to make a joke either, so that's funny. Thank you all for being so attentive, and give our panel a hand. Could they have been any better?